Howdy y'all, Stock Warden here, back with another video. And today we're looking at Lithium Americas Corporation, and they have been doing a little bit of work, but they have been doing a lot of losses in the financial sector, and that is why we have seen this huge dip in the stock over the past coming months. And the last time that we had checked on this stock was back over here on Thursday, October the 20th, So it has been roughly a month since we have been able to go over and cover this stock. They did put out their Q3 results, so we're going to get into it and find out just where this stock is going to start heading, because they had a major loss on their financials for Q3 of 2025. We're going to get into it and also cover a lot of what the government is looking into for this company as well, to see if this bear run is going to continue, or if we're going to possibly start seeing a bit of resistance and possibly see some more bulls come out of this stock. So, as it stands right now, Lithium Americas has announced that it has filed its quarterly report on Form the 10Q, which includes the company's considered and condensed consolidated interim financial statements for the 3 and 9 months ended September 30th, 2025, and provided a full update on its Thacker Pass lithium project in Humboldt County, Nevada. So, LAC has had an issue previously on getting their financials sent in to NASDAQ and being compliant. So this is more or less them saying, hey, we're doing all the right paperwork, we're keeping everything together, so then their stock can still stay relevant and open for investors to stay public. So that's a plus. Jonathan Evans, which is the president and chief executive officer of Lithium Americas, said that we are proud to have secured the support of the U.S. administration, General Motors, and our valued partners in advancing Thacker Pass to help onshore large-scale lithium production, strengthen the U.S. supply chain, create high-quality jobs, and contribute to America's long-term energy security and economic resilience. With the first DOE loan drawdown from the U.S. Department of Energy now received, we have significantly enhanced the project's certainty and stability and are full steam ahead on construction. Our workforce continues to grow each week, with approximately 700 workers now on site and over 80% of detailed engineering complete. We are making tangible progress across all fronts, from steel and concrete work to site infrastructure and the expansion of our workforce hub, added Mr. Evans. So he came out and had a huge sentiment over this, and he knew that with this DOE loan, it was going to more or less tank the stock from where it was, and it has done just that, because they have taken out these huge loans that we'll get into some of the exact numbers here in a minute, and those huge loans completely decimated every single little bit of profit that they would have had is going directly into these massive loans that they have had to procure to continue keeping the Thacker Pass project on par with the suggested time frame for them to be up and running and actually pulling lithium out of the ground. So to actually get into the specific numbers, during the quarter, which ended on September 30th, $145.9 million of construction capital costs and other project-related costs were fully capitalized. As of September 30th, 2025, a total of $720 million of construction capital cost and other project-related costs have been capitalized. So the company continues to progress major construction at Thacker Pass. Mechanical completion of the Phase 1 processing plant is targeted for late 2027. So that's more or less stating that this stock is at a hugely discounted rate right now, as it is in its small baby stage of it building. So whenever they are completed with their phase 1 in 2027, that will be when this stock should explode, because then they will actually start pulling metal out of the ground and sending it off to be bought and actually purchased for a full return. So then they'll be able to actually pay down all their loans, get off of their debt, get into cleaner books, and then they'll be able to push really hard for their investor sentiment. So this is a definite long haul stock. Now, we've been covering it for quite some time, so this is no surprise at all to see that this stock is still going to be at a cheaper rate, especially since they did pull out these loans, which is not necessarily surprising considering they still can't really raise a whole lot of capital except out of this public offering for the stock, and also a little bit of subsidy that I'm sure they're going to end up getting from the government, which we'll get into that after the financials are done. So the engineering design is surpassed 80% design completion and is expected to surpass 90% design completion by the year's end. The higher level of detailed engineering, at the early stages of construction helps to de-risk execution in terms of project schedule and cost. So on site at Thacker Pass, the first steel columns have been installed and permanent plant roads and entrances, as well as laydown yards to store long lead equipment, have been completed. The fabrication yard in Lithium America has received steel for pre-assembled pipe rack sections, and the company has entered into certain purchase agreements related to long lead equipment, infrastructure, and services related to the construction of the processing plant, as well as development and mining services at Thacker Pass. So approximately $430 million has been committed. So major long lead equipment and substantial amount of other equipment and construction materials are expected to be delivered either to Thacker Pass or the fabrication yard in Lithium America throughout the first quarter of 2026. So most of this equipment and construction material is sourced from Canada, China, India, the UAE, Turkey, and the European Union, which are subjected to tariffs, unfortunately. So the company has been working toward limiting the effect of any potential tariffs on their construction supply chain, with approximately 75% of the total capital project cost structure related to labor, contractors, and other services not expected to be directly affected by any potential tariffs. So there were approximately 550 manual craft and 150 additional site workers, for a total of approximately 700 personnel directly on site. This is expected to increase to about 1,000 personnel on site at the end of 2025 and approximately 1,800 at peak construction. So placement of housing modules at the company's all-inclusive housing facility for construction workers in Lithium America is complete, and the occupancy permit was received for the first phase. So the first residents have taken occupancy in late September. So that's continuing building their infrastructure, building their company up, building the Thacker Pass construction. So they're still moving full steam ahead into getting Thacker Pass up and running. So the financial and the corporate highlights of Q3 is that the company had $385.6 million in cash and restricted cash. On October 1st, the company completed the At the Market Equity Program, which was established on May 15th. So the company sold an aggregate total of 26.922 million common shares pursuant to the May 2025 ATM program. During Q3, the company sold and issued 18.905 million common shares at an average price of $3.10 per share. And the aggregate net proceeds to that was $57.5 million after the sales agent commission and other expenses. So they were able to bring and raise in some capital for that, which was an amazing feat as well. Then the company sold and issued 4.656 million common shares at an average price point of $6.90 per share, pursuant to the May 2025 ATM program as well, with the aggregate net proceeds of $31.7 million after sales agents commission and all other expenses. So they are playing with the stock itself, it seems, where they're able to sell plenty of stock and have more shareholders brought into the fold for them to sell some of their common stock to be able to raise more capital to keep moving as fast as they're moving, which gives more investment into the people instead of the company. So that just shows that while, yes, they are quite strapped for cash, that they are still looking at being more heavily in the investor sentiment than just a strong-armed company, lo and behold, all the way throughout, which can be a great thing, especially considering they're looking to be mainly government preceded and held. So that's going to be something good to look forward to as well, especially if you are an investor already for LAC, technically, no matter at what price point you got in at. So on October 7th, the company and the DOE entered into an omnibus waiver consent and amendment for certain amendments to the company's previously announced U.S. Department of Energy Loans Program Office, and under the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing. So the expected total loan amount decreased to $2.23 billion from the DOE loan due to estimated capitalized interest during the construction, which decreased to $256 million, while the DOE loan principal remained the same at $1.97 billion. So the interest rate that will be applied to loans drawn under the DOE loan remains unchanged, and the applicable long-dated U.S. Treasury rate from the date of each draw with 0% spread. So the DOE's loan tenor is approximately 23 years from date of first draw, and the DOE has agreed to defer $184 million of scheduled debt service obligations under the DOE loan, which were to occur in the first 5 years of loan repayment, with the total deferred balance reallocated across the remaining payment periods to maturity. So the company also is taking a 5% equity stake in the company at an exercise price of 1 cent per share. So all of that is coming into a huge play because not only do they know that they're giving them this huge loan to continue and create Thacker Pass, plus they're getting these shares, but they're also giving them a 5-year buffer zone, so to speak, where they can play around with $185 million back and forth within the first 5 years to be able to not have to completely cash out and pay everything down on this loan in the short term until they can start pulling in some profits, because the DOE knows that their phase 1 isn't supposed to be ready until 2027. So if they pull from 2025, then they're not going to have to go all the way out and go crazy into pushing LAC to start writing off as bad debt or, tearing into the business until 2030. So that's going to give LAC ample time to get phase 1 up and start creating product, pulling metal out of the ground, and actually start turning a good profit to be able to start paying this loan down to be able to then start getting better sentiment and a better look into this company's investment portfolio as well. So with all of that, the company will contribute an additional $120 million to the DOE loan reserve accounts to be funded within 12 months of the OWCA. So in addition, the company and General Motors, their joint venture and partner in the Thacker Pass, have entered into an amendment to GM's lithium offtake agreement to provide additional support to the project. So the amendment permits the JV to enter into an additional third-party offtake agreement for certain remaining production volumes not forecasted to be purchased by GM for the first 5 years of Phase 1. So that means in the first 5 years of production, they're not going to be pushing a lot of product into GM. They're going to be pushing to make solid profit with the first 5 years of Phase 1 of LAC, so they can get all of their loans down and get all their books in order and start turning a decent profit before they start dumping free, well, I say free, already bought metal into GM. So that's something that LAC has done on a great move for them pushing into the future whenever they finish their Phase 1 to not already be sold out of metal, and the first metal they pull out being already promised, then they can't turn a profit with it. So that was a good move on their part. So on October 14th, the company issued and sold an aggregate total of 30.5 million common shares at an average price of $8.19 a share, pursuant to the October 2025 ATM program. So that would also make a large bring in as to why the stock ended up finally on their down spiral, because on the 14th is whenever we seen them hit their 52-week high at that point. So when they sold, then that is whenever this trend kind of started on the next two big candles, because once they sold, everybody knew that they sold. So that kind of sparked this huge dip within the first 2 days on the 15th, 16th, and 17th, because with the company selling a huge chunk of shares, then that kind of signaled the market as to where they were heading. And so that's just kind of where we're looking at right now, with the stock sitting roughly at $4.50 a share. It kind of seems like they have bounced off of this $4.40 a share a couple of times with a couple of different candles across the way. So we'll see how time goes, if they're going to be able to kind of hold on to this resistance, or if they can pull up a little bit bullish or bearish. So, and the sentiment on that after all of these financials, because they ended up with a huge net loss where their operating expenses was $24 million and their net loss was $223 million, which is a huge sentiment loss from 2024, but they didn't have these massive loans in 2024 as well. So that is where this Q3 in 2025 is going to be looking quite bleak on their financials from this massive $2 billion loan that they have taken. So now, off of the financials, because yes, their financials look bleak, their loans look huge, and their sentiment is not all there right now because of their huge missed estimate, because of their loans that they have taken out to consider pushing forward to make Thacker Pass a project. If we go into the news standard about all of this, now that China is pushing to use rare earth minerals as leverage against America for tariffs, is something that is going to create a massive market interference. So the U.S. House Committee has reported accusing China of manipulating mineral prices, and they're recommending specific price controls and also generating a U.S. mineral stockpile. So the Chinese embassy in D.C. says that there is nothing credible about the committee, which is a huge red flag in itself. So China has sought to manipulate global critical minerals prices for decades, using that control as an economic weapon to expand its manufacturing sector and its geopolitical influence. So the allegations are going to be contained in this huge bipartisan section in the U.S. House. So that's going to be something that's going to continue to be fought after in the government as it stands right now. So Donald Trump and also President Biden in recent years sought to try to crimp China's dominance in the critical minerals sector. So, and that is where a company like LAC comes in and gets involved, where LAC can start creating and giving U.S. a lot larger range of U.S. critical minerals that are pulled out of the ground of the U.S. that the U.S. owns, operates, and holds. So then China can't necessarily be completely dependent, knowing that everything that they have, America does not. So all of that is coming through where, unfortunately, 2027 cannot come sooner for this company, but every day that goes by is a day closer to Thacker Pass's Phase 1 completion for metal to start being pulled out of the ground and huge, huge profits to be made. So, as it stands right now, the sentiment is looking good for this stock because now all rare mineral stocks and all of your standard recycling stocks are all going to be looking really good, and we'll probably have a pretty decent little bull run because the markets are going to be specifically looking at all of these options now that China is kind of playing a huge financial game with these rare minerals. So it would not surprise me at all if LAC did get a decent little bump in the next coming days to weeks. And as we run kind of into the holidays and into the winter months, I'm sure digging is going to end up slowing down a little bit, but that's not going to slow down the rest of the construction that they're still pursuing underway at Thacker Pass. So with all that being said, I hope you all enjoyed the video. I know this was a long one and a definitely long-winded one. So I will keep y'all up to date on this stock as the new news comes about. I'm sure we'll probably hear more about this one and other mining stocks while the U.S. government and China will be fighting back and forth on these mineral rights and also for the pricing on all of these minerals back and forth for imports and exports. So stay tuned for all of those to catch up and stay in tune on the latest and greatest for all of that. So then we can all hopefully be able to continue boosting our portfolios and making retirements looking a little bit better, a little sweeter, and a little sooner. So for right now, this is the Stock Warden riding off. So y'all come back now, you hear?